Hello everybody, welcome to the channel today. It is middle of January and it's freezing cold outside, and close this window here. There's supposed to be snow on the way, supposedly by the weekend, so apparently everyone's getting racing for that and getting prepared for that. Today, today I was wanting to talk about something I've been kind of thinking about for a while, and I haven't really come together with how to really discuss it. And I'm still not sure if I know exactly where this is going to go. Actually, to be honest, this is something I've kind of thought about in a way that since before I even started this channel, and when I was actually thinking about starting this channel. And so it's kind of a big thing for me as I was sort of processing everything. So I haven't really figured out what this is actually going to be called. You could say this has a lot to do with tribalism in the church. Of course, there are just various denominations, but also just even within denominations, just the church you are at versus the church down the street or on the other side of town, things like that. And it kind of has, I think it's a little bit more than that. There's a lot of things that just seem like they're becoming a bit more integral part of the church's function. And it's sort of like they just seem like their function has changed. But I'll get into that. I think I'll just sort of kind of go through it here. So one of the things you might see throughout the epistles in the New Testament, the letters that Paul has written to various churches. Many times, very often, he will, towards the end of many of those letters, he would sort of urge people to greet this person and greet the other believers and salute other believers, and whatever salute means, I guess greet. But I think when you think of salute, you're thinking like sort of like giving a salute to someone in the military, which is something which is funny that he says salute, since very often he talks about us being in warfare as we're spreading the gospel. So it's interesting that they're doing that. Sort of like a sign of respect, which I think is a big deal, that you have respect for other believers, for wherever walk of life they're going through, whether it's the same as you or whether you're in the same status in the church or serving in the same way. I think it's always important to give believers respect where it is due. And he also urged believers to pray for one another and pray for others. And And that's always a major thing to do, to be faithful to. Um, Prayer, I think, is a big ministry that seems to be underestimated. In fact, you don't see very much of a prayer group anymore. And when you do, even when there is, it's always sort of kept locked behind specific members of the church. It's not like the people in the regular congregation is not always really invited to do that. Which was very different from before, and I'm just going to get into that as well. It's just like things have changed. Became a Christian back in 1999, and I went to the People's Church in the 2000. And when I think of the People's Church and what I've seen there and how people operated there in that place was essentially a Baptist church, and its true real name was First Baptist Church. People's Church is what kind of their pseudo name that they kind of came up with. But the Baptist Church, just the way it was like then versus the way churches are now is so different. It's beyond belief. The way churches operate now is drastically different from what they did 26 years ago. And quite honestly, I think it's for the worse. If anything, it was sort of like these changes were part of a business model. To be honest, it's sort of a business model. And they're getting away from what the church was meant to be. And they just come up with these little systems and more often than not, they tend to just disrupt the ministry than they actually help them. But I'm kind of being a little vague here, but we'll get more into this. So I think where I'm going with this is, so basically it's like this. As far as tribalism goes, it's something that's always kind of existed, to a degree. And it's really bizarre. It's just like, and it's actually become a little more intensified in some situations, but there are Christians who will reject you because you go to some other church, or you're not all in on whatever their church is doing. There are people if you're wondering why you're being rejected by certain circles, it's because maybe you're not in their small group, maybe you're not serving here or there or anywhere. Maybe you just got there. Maybe you're still trying to figure things out, but you're not. Or maybe you're just sort of you've decided your calling is a little different. There are apparently places that reject. There are just people who will just reject you for that. So this has become, so that's something that's very perturbing about the way churches have been. And there's most of the time I've seen a lot of that with individuals, and not always directly from the leadership in the past. However, things obviously have changed. When I moved back to Nashville from Memphis in 2019, before then I spent about 10, well, how much time? 8 years at Crossway, which was a very much smaller church, but it was a bit, it's not tiny, but it was much more tight knit congregation, and a little more just they were a little more just not a little more loose. But coming back to Nashville, so one thing I'm coming back to Nashville where people just obviously there's more money. People have more money than in Memphis, so that shows in the type of churches you see, and also they clearly are showing some of they're following a specific business model or something, and they're just sort of like they're almost programmed. Their church services are almost programmed in a way, and I've been seeing this at the Life Church too. When I was there, that since I was much more involved there, I got this kind of when I was serving, I was doing media for some of their leadership conferences for other churches, and a lot of that was about training other people at other churches on set business models that actually they believed would bring people in and really make the church thrive. And I think a lot of people, particularly in Memphis, kind of adopted a lot of the ideas that they did. Like there were some things they had like called the fresh start. You'd see certain people use that term fresh start, which is really just talking about people who are recommitting them or committing themselves to Christ and becoming a Christian, I guess, or recommitting. Here in Nashville, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of the same things. They're all adopting like a pre-programmed script for their services and everything that they do in the church. But it's more than that. So let me see. New Tribe, they thought it was a good idea to have these transient small groups that where nobody can really get to know anyone, and they would constantly reset every 6 months, and then you only meet like 6 times within a period of 6 weeks or something like that, and then it's over. You just got to wait another 6 months. It was actually insane. It was like it was sort of creating this feeling of it's impossible to become really tight knit with anybody. Just like these weird things, and it's just like, and then they decided to have a Bible study at 6:30 a.m. for men, and then a 6:30 p.m. Bible study for women. And so then out the door, when I'm getting split up, I'm having to go to something separately from my wife, and my wife is not going to really volunteer to go off to some Bible study by herself. And then it was like 6:30, virtually impossible for me to do it, for me to drive out there and have the stamina to get up and go do that. I don't know. And then be able to get back for work. There was no thought went into that. So it's just, I mean, it seemed almost deliberate when deliberately crafted that way. But I mean, but it's just sort of weird things like that. So I mean, let's see. Another thing I'm seeing here in the Murfreesboro area is some of these churches find it a great idea that they should be pushing memberships. That now at in all the churches I've been to, there were things such as membership. Especially People's Church had it. It was not something that was sort of at People's Church. It was not something that was really advertised or marketed. It was sort of this thing that was sort of out there. There was this kind of there, but it was not really held in a lot of. There was not a lot of meaning put to it, because I mean it was pretty open about not open about who can do what necessarily, but I mean you can. But I mean it was not like they were not treating it like some major milestone in your time there. It was sort of just there. The Life Church, I mean, they had memberships, but it was not like a lot was put in, not a lot of meaning was put behind that. I did start serving there, and that sort of triggered them asking me to become a member. And it was like, here, since you're here, maybe you can fill out this membership card. And I was like, oh, okay. And there you go. And that was it. It was not some major thing. Same with Crossway. I was serving at one point for a while, and then there were, I don't remember maybe it was Pastor Paul, but he just approached me and said, hey, since you're here, maybe we can go ahead and fill out this membership card. And it's like, oh, okay, I'll go ahead and do that. I'm already here. I'm already serving. Why not? So it's just like, it was that easy. And I was already serving. I didn't have to become a member to start serving. Now it's become this little system. And it's just like, I've never had I seen membership become a big thing. It's just like they're turning into some type of statement of being committed to the church in some way. Well, committed how? If I'm committed, I'll do something I'll either be going and probably tithing and still going, or I'm going to be serving in some way. I mean, I'm here, aren't I? I'm committed right now. We could do something right now before God calls me somewhere else. Your system is not going to stop, is not going to change what God's going to do. They wanted to do this. They wanted to create these systems and place certain things behind closed doors and gatekeep certain things, which I don't know what those. I don't think those things are really not really clear what those things are that they're gatekeeping. I guess there's supposedly an information ballot that goes out through email at Bel Air, but I'm trying to figure out what was the point. I guess maybe if you wanted to serve, they would expect you to be a member first, but really it's just like it was never made this difficult. It was never made this cumbersome. It's just like, what are you doing with that? And same with one church. There, of course, I'll be honest, as far as memberships go, I'd say they're probably even more blatant and emphasizing their importance. They even go as far as having renewals. Renewals for what? So what does that mean if I don't renew? Do I have to go through the whole process again? Am I just going to be like, okay, you became a member, but now you're expired, so now you have to go through the whole discovery process again? Is that going to be like that? Is it going to be like, oh, you missed your driver's license expired, you have to take the driver's test again? Is that kind of what the idea is here? What is the implication of renewing? What do you think you're doing? This is just like, I think this is something they're trying to, maybe this is something they're trying to get people adapted to. Well, they're not going to put a bunch of prerequisites towards membership except for maybe serving, but I mean, come on, really. So this is sort of like, so when you have these systems, especially with this membership, and even though you're not really doing anything with that, it's almost like, it's sort of like a precursor to institutionalizing tribalism now. Okay, you're not a part of our church because you're not a member yet. So you're going to have to stay here on the outside for a little while until you finish discovery, which is going to be in about 4 months. So you're going to have to wait. And then there's step 2 and step 3 and step 4 and step 5. So you're going to have to wait for those to finish up before we can do anything with you. That's just bonkers. It just creates, and it's like, now it's not even about God's leading of the Holy Spirit in each person, or even about the genuine fellowship you have with other believers when they visit. It's all about protocol and initiation. And this has just gotten away from what church is about. Paul fellowshiped with dozens of churches, and dozens of believers in various churches. There was no initiation ritual that was taking place. Or is it only okay for people in leadership to visit other churches and have friends at other churches? Is that the idea? If you're a pastor, you can go to the XYZ church and speak at XYZ church and have relations with people at XYZ church, and then come back to your church and say, hey, I just flew to wherever, and it was great. But you have to stay put. You can't move because you're just a little person. So I talked about this memberships and the transient small groups that seem to plague a lot of churches. But there's also something called, there's also the thing with, like I mentioned, you may feel called to a certain ministry. And the problem is with these systems is you're going to have a hard time finding your place. Bel Air, there's very rare, I've seen that there's very rarely space for serving in a ministry that you feel called to. Unless I were to think about doing media again, but honestly, I don't feel very strongly about that because it's just not it's past experiences just tell me it was just, I don't know how I'd feel, but maybe it'd be okay, maybe not. But to say you were called to something, you'd have a hard time. There was a very rare instance where recently that a bunch of openings came up in the kids ministry, and they were really trying to get people involved there. And I wasn't totally sure about it, but I mean, I figured, okay, I guess I got to do something. So I went and signed up. And I didn't really hear back very quickly. And the thing was I was sort of thinking, hey, maybe I'll be able to do Wednesday or something. But when I was communicated, it was sort of like saying, oh, this is for 9:30 on Sunday. And I waited a little bit for replying back. Eventually I did reply back and say, okay, maybe I can try to do it. But it was not there. So it wasn't like I was being invited into serving something. I was more just filling a slot. And it just wasn't really the same, really the way you would think it should be. Even the Life Church, they treat everybody serving as a form of abundance. And it's not like they would, I mean, everyone, as many people as possible could come in and they'd find a place for you. Absolutely. But here it's sort of like you're applying for a job almost. So there was one point where I did kind of mention something about starting something with autistic adults, and they thought, pastor said it was a really good idea, but I mean, I haven't heard anything about it, and nobody ever talked to me about it. And so I mentioned it to a few other people, and they thought, oh, that might be good. And so it's just trying to find something to do under their umbrella would be basically impossible. You're sort of just left to do it on your own at that point. And here I am at the mercy of YouTube's algorithm, which is already voting me down. And then I don't have the backing of any church. And that's not helpful. I mean, when Paul went out, he had the backing of the church. I mean, when other missionaries went out in the early church, they had the backing. They had the church. They had the prayers of those churches. They had the support of those churches. I'm sure they were supported financially as well, in some instances, in many instances. And so this is something that is something that was lost. Now it's like if you're wanting to start a ministry, you're on your own. You don't have any support. You have nothing. Then you got to go out, and then you want to put something on YouTube, and YouTube is going to screw you over and make sure you're not reaching anybody. And this is the problem. This is the problem with the church right now. Ministries can't start. Ministries can't grow. In many ways, your ministry is an opposition to them, and what you want to do is in opposition to them. And there's no way to find unity in the church when you have situations like that. I said this was about tribalism, but like I mentioned, it's kind of much more than that. And it's really about just something that's really happened in the church within the last few decades that has really been for the worse. And And I'm actually been questioning whether it is worth wasting time with these type of churches that are implementing these systems. It's just I'm starting to think. I'm wondering if maybe the church has sailed and somewhere else now. Like it's not here. And maybe it still kind of is here, but there's definitely believers here, but there's something definitely not right. And I've been experiencing it for the past 7 years now. And I'm trying to figure out what the answer is. I would hope to find a place like Crossway again, and I don't know if that means going back to Memphis and starting again, or if something else. But that's kind of where I am at with all of this, and but I'm sure I'll have more to talk about later about something related, and I'm sure it'll come up. But till next time, I'll just end the video here. Thank you all for watching. And until next time, see you later.